I'm coming on here today to talk about something called the PRO Act. So many of you might be familiar with something similar, a regulation or rule called AB5 that was enacted in California. Well, this has spanned beyond the state of California and is something that is about to be signed in at the national level. So you have to look up the PRO Act. I sent a whole email out this morning about the details about what the PRO Act is. It is destined to be signed in on March 11th. So we have from now until March 11th to fight for this and make a difference. Many people have not heard about what is going on because no one's talking about it. Why are people not talking about it? I don't know. Number one, I know I have a big international audience. So for the people who are outside of the US, you cannot contact your congressperson unless you have that US zip code, but it will impact you. So you need to be aware of it because the US economy is powering so much of the opportunities that we come across as freelancers. This goes so far beyond freelance writers. This is impacting truck drivers, dance instructors, caregivers. So many people are classified as independent contractors. It is a way that we are operating freely in the US, that we're becoming entrepreneurial. It's not just, hey, I'm delivering Grubhub. Many of these articles, you'll see that it's a picture of Grubhub. This isn't about the Uber drivers alone. This is not about one specific set of people. This is so many people who are classified as independent contractors. And even going further, there are so many entrepreneurs out there that rely on the services of independent contractors to scale. So for anybody who's wanting to start their own business where they're going to be employing people, maybe you have dreams of scaling a large business, guess what? All of those companies start out by hiring independent contractors and freelancers in order to scale up to where they need to be because they cannot afford a full-time employee, okay? So the impacts of this bill, if it goes into effect, if we do not stop this, are so far-reaching and are so damaging to our country as a whole from an economic standpoint. It's insane. And the fact that full-time freelancers who rely on quote-unquote gig work for their living are not sounding the alarm on this. I don't know if it's because you love Biden and you don't want to tell the truth about how damaging his policies are, but we have to be honest because no matter how you vote, in such a negative way, okay? So I want to talk about the PRO Act, and I'm sounding the alarms on social media. I'm posting about it on LinkedIn. I'm posting about it on Facebook. I'm trying to post it in groups, but my reach only goes out to maybe 8,000 people total, right? I mean, my email list is 6,000 people. I have 11,000 people on YouTube where this video will wind up. So I'm sounding the alarm, trying to get the word out, but I'm just one person. There's several lawsuits in action right now of other freelancers. They're journalists, editors. They are suing over this law because of how damaging it was in California. And now it is about to become so wide sweeping. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, what can I do about this? I'm just one person. And other than speaking up about it and posting about it, I think the one thing actually I can do is explain to you how, or rather why I became a freelancer and why it is so important, why the ability to freelance is so important specifically for women. So even though this is going to impact so many people, that this is going to have such far-reaching impact, one of the most powerful things I can do is share with you my story about what freelance saved me from, why freelance became a lifeline for me at a time when I was really at such a low point in life, and why specifically for women who are using freelancing to balance their home and personal lives, and for women like me who escaped a corporate situation that was super toxic. I was able to escape the boys' club of my career, of my profession, and work from home and choose who I spoke to, who I did business with, and I could choose what I could allow. And I'm going to tell you the story of that in more detail than I've gone into in the past, because many of you who are following me from YouTube know about my story. You know what kind of situation I was in before I became a freelancer. I was a full-time salesperson and I basically quit with no backup plan, and then I got my grounding as a freelancer by cold pitching. That's why I created 30 Days to Pay. That's why I give you guys the information I give you, is because it's based off of a framework that I used step by step to land my first client and never have to go back to W-2 employment. And that's what this law is trying to do. If I could just summarize this law or this bill that's going to be passed in just like the shortest, put it in a nutshell, it is going to make companies have to go through so much to work with independent contractors. It's going to introduce so much red tape to that process that they will choose eventually to not work with independent contractors. Now, many of you who are going to argue, well, they want to put that law into effect so that it can protect people who are being worked like a full-time employee, but they don't get any of the benefits. Well, this is the problem when you try to lump everybody into one category, because I don't need the government's protection to do my job and to make a living. I know how to run my business in a way where I don't need the health benefits. This is a risk I'm willing to take so that I can work on my own schedule. So when the government comes in and says, no, we need to protect you because you're just this little pathetic thing that doesn't know how to run your business, and we need to make sure that you're getting all the protections. Please stop protecting me, okay? I don't need the government's protection. Just like they tried to force that vaccine, right? It was to protect us. Now we know that, number one, it never stopped anybody from getting COVID. We know now the impact of that vaccine that was forced on so many people. Anytime they come in and force you into situations and tell you it's for your own good, don't tell me what's for my own good. I am taking a chance on myself as a freelancer. So when these powers that be come in and try to tell you, no, you can't take a risk on yourself, that's too dangerous. You won't be protected. It's basically the most demeaning thing you can say to a person is, do not take a chance on yourself, because you need to play it safe and you need to make sure that you have everything you need, and we the big government, we're going to come in and give it to you. No, I don't need that. And if you're listening to this, you don't need that either. So it's time to stand up and stop that overreach and keep the government where it needs to be so that it's helping us, instead of imposing more restrictions that will make it nearly impossible for so many people to make a living. There are 72 million people right now who are considered independent contractors. 60 million of those are women, okay? And women have specific purposes for going into this line of work. I think of the mothers that don't want to leave their babies and they're able to get these jobs done during nap time, okay? I think of people who have illnesses and chronic debilitating illness that doesn't allow them to function as a W-2 full-time employee. And that's what people aren't understanding, is that there's a certain percentage of the population that we're very capable, we're very driven, and we can get results, but we're not going to fit into this little box that is called a W-2 employee. That's something I've always struggled with, because I've been working since I was 14 years old. I know I'm capable, I know I'm a hard worker, but I have certain things in my life that have really restricted me from being that good W-2 employee. It's why I've never really stayed at a job for a long period of time. These are things that, people will try to say that you're flaky, or that, you can't commit to things long term, but not everybody is meant to go into that line of work. And I'm somebody who has tried and tried and tried, and it just never worked for me, okay? So that's why I'm getting fired up about this. I don't know why people aren't talking about this, but then again, when I look back at what happened in 2020 with COVID and saw actual business owners sabotaging their own businesses because they were being told, make your customers wear masks. Don't let customers come in unless they douse themselves in hand sanitizer, and do all of these really harmful things to your business. Shut your doors. Some people were happy to do that. They were happy to put themselves out of a job just for the sake of compliance. Oh, the government's telling me that if I do this, I'll be safe, so it must be true. Well, and then it comes out now that 6 feet thing, that keep a 6 foot circle around you, that was BS. It was literally made up. That came out, that's a quoted fact from Fauci, that was made up. We were sitting around one day and we just figured, let's tell people that they need to stay 6 feet apart. That was made up. So the fact that people are happy to sabotage their own business and close their own doors for the sake of safety, it's actually not surprising. That's why we're not seeing people sound the alarm on this. So my whole call to action here is literally check the email that I sent you this morning and write your congressional rep, enter in your zip code, do what you need to do. I provided a copy and paste letter, which, I copied and pasted and sent to my rep here in Florida. But let me just go into my story, because someone said, are they shutting down businesses or only freelancers? They're basically shutting down freelancers. But when you think of how many businesses rely on the work of independent contractors, whether that's a truck driver, whether that's a graphic designer, whether that's a business consultant, okay? Freelancers, this whole independent contractor thing is it's so widespread that you can't even imagine the far-reaching impact on business in general, okay? And even if you're not in the US, this is an economic, ripple that will be felt. And it's also just a huge red flag for them taking away the entrepreneurial spirit that built this country. This is why people are coming here, to be able to say, I want to start up this business. I want to start up this store. They are able to come to this country and do that. And when this all goes into effect, we will no longer have the freedom to do that, okay? So the reason why I became a freelancer, it's funny. Everybody online kind of has this marketing tactic, especially if you do what I do, where it's like, look at the freelance life. I'm here on my laptop on the beach and there's all, I'm so free and all my flexible schedule and stuff like that. But really what it comes down to for me is not, I can do whatever I want and I'm printing money over here. Those are very catchy marketing tactics that get people to click on the YouTube video, so no shade. But the true reason for me, and for if you're a woman or whatever, you can understand this, it's protection and safety. When I was in my 9-to-5 sales career, which I had basically spent 10 years from the moment I graduated college up until probably age 28, 29, I was climbing the ranks as a B2B technology salesperson. Okay, so I started out as an inside sales rep with the little headset on and all the little sales bros around me, and was making 100 cold calls per day. I kept climbing ranks, kept switching companies. Eventually I got more responsibilities. I became an outside rep. I became a sales trainer. This was my path. Someone said, you're not 18. I'm 33. So everyone is very confused because they say that they thought I was in my 20s. I'm 33. So when I say I was doing sales for 10 years, I'm not in my 20s remotely anymore. So I was climbing the ranks in that career field, and eventually, this was the peak for me, I became an outside rep managing my own territory for a company that was headquartered in Mississippi. I was selling technology to school districts. So if anyone's wondering, why are you a B2B technology writer? It's because I literally took the experience of selling that product and segued it into a freelance copywriting career. This is the method I teach in 30 Days to Paid, is hey, take your past experience and build yourself up as a freelancer who offers a service, and you have the knowledge and the specialty. So I had the knowledge and the specialty from this past job. Now, two really important things. I'm going to talk about two important facts, which is number one, my mental health, which is why freelancing has been so conducive for someone like me. And number two, what happened at this job that pushed me over the edge, that finally got me out of W-2 employment for good. So just for, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this if you struggle with your mental health, but I've always struggled with my mental health. That's something that literally since 8 years old, I've struggled with. I've had all the diagnoses, major depressive disorder, been medicated, gotten off meds, done all the things, been in therapy since I was probably 19. So that right there has made, I would say, W-2 full-time employment really tough because not being in total control of your emotions is a really bad look as in the corporate world. You really have to kind of be someone who can control their emotions. And, even just freelancing now, one of the things that I really appreciate and am so grateful for and feel so blessed about is the fact that if I'm having one of those days where I am absolutely spiraling, no one has to know about it. If I have to shut the computer and put my deadlines off because I need to deal with what's going on inside me, I can do that. I have the privacy and the freedom to manage myself. I was also diagnosed with ADD. Unfortunately, it was much later in life, so I didn't get maybe the resources and stuff that I could have been incorporating into my day-to-day habits in order to manage that. But if you combine ADD with this, depression that I've dealt with, these mental health issues, it does make working a traditional job really hard. Not because I'm lazy, not because I'm not motivated, not because I can't work. It's because the way I work is different than what other people work. So if you have a chronic illness, if you're dealing with a physical, if you are disabled, if you have these differences, let's just call them differences, freelancing gives you the ability, if you have the drive and the motivation and the resilience, the persistence, if you have all of those key traits, regardless of your ailment or your illness or your deficit, you're able to make a full-time living doing what you like to do on your own terms. So that's why I do this, is because it's the most conducive work to me. Now, I sell digital products in addition to my one-to-one freelance services. But I will forever probably be a freelancer despite how much money my digital products arm of my business makes, because it is the most conducive form of work for me. So where there's a lot of people maybe in my space who they're gaining traction, so they stop taking on clients. That's not my situation. I still rely on freelance income because I'm very passionate about doing work in this space and providing one-to-one services. So I just want that to just, if I'm someone who struggles with that in terms of hey, it's really hard for me to work a full-time job because I have mental health struggles and I have ADD and I manage my day differently than a lot of people. If that's my problem, could you imagine all of that? What percentage of that 70 million independent contractors, what percentage of them is struggling with even worse things? And they're going to be pushed out and say, go get a full-time job. And the reason I say that is because when I explained this to a friend, they were like, well, what's the worst that can happen? They'll be incentivized to create more W-2 jobs and they'll just hire you on as an employee. And people don't understand that I don't want to be an employee. I actually did for a 6-month period try to take a full-time job as a writer, because I'm okay, maybe I just didn't love what I did in sales. Maybe I would love the security of a full-time job as a writer, because that's what I love doing. And it was honestly just as bad. There's certain people who just are not able to take that W-2 full-time job and actually thrive in that environment. Furthermore, this is what I also don't like about certain policies when it comes to coming back to politics. It's stop thinking that we're going to have this utopia because you're putting these protections on people, because the mindset behind this law is well, this is going to create more protections for workers. There's going to be more W-2 jobs. There's going to be more full-time jobs. So they'll just hire you as a full-time employee. Well, when you look at the studies, because this was enacted in California in 2020, the AB5 law that decimated and destroyed the livelihood of millions of freelancers in California, now the studies are out, just like COVID. Now the studies are out telling us the truth and what the impact of what happened there. Now the studies are out. Not only did it displace so many self-employed people, it actually impacted employment as a whole. Employment went down. So that was the whole goal. Okay, we need to protect you. We need to give you more regulations, more rules so you can be safe. So not only did they displace freelancers, but it impacted employment numbers as a whole in the state of California. And now that's going to be pushed out to the entire country. So it's not good to kind of put these blanket laws on people of, hey, we know what's best for you. We're going to put you and, you're going to be a W-2 employee. There are people who do not want to be W-2 employees. And if that means that they don't get health insurance, if that means that they don't know when their next gig is coming, we signed up for this. Maybe we're taking care of ill family members. There's so many life circumstances that you cannot get away with when you're working for a full-time job that you can have the autonomy and the freedom to as a freelancer. So I'm just going to explain to you from a safety standpoint why actually, despite what the government is telling me about how, this is going to deliver more safety and security, I want to share with you where I was before I started freelancing and why freelancing is actually the most safe and secure position, especially if you're a woman. So as you know, I was in sales, a very male-dominated type of sales specifically, which was technology sales for school districts, okay? And a lot of you know my story, but I don't feel like I went into the details enough to kind of explain to you like how bad it really was and what prompted me to finally leave W-2 employment. And I do want to start off with this scripture because in Genesis 50, verse 20, it says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people." So this is exactly how I feel about this situation, is that what was intended for harm and what brought me to such a low level and such an all-time low was ultimately what pushed me into freelancing and something that I was so passionate about that I decided to talk to other people about freelancing. And that's why we're here today. That's why you're hearing what I'm saying. So when I worked for this company, I also want to just put a blanket statement out there to say that not all men are bad, okay? I'm not one of those people that'll say like, hey, I was sexually harassed, therefore all men are this. Actually, I met so many amazing men who like stood up for me and actually protected me throughout my time in that sales position. So I'm just putting that out there. However, there were a few that a few bad apples spoil the bunch, as they say. So my job as a technology salesperson was to go into school districts and sell technology products. I worked for a company that offered thousands upon thousands of products. We had a whole catalog, and basically these schools have their preferred suppliers, and I was one of them. I would go in, I would meet with clients, get to know them, present the products. There was a lot of whining and dining. I had a budget, I had a company credit card, and it was like, hey, even though this is a regulated industry, we couldn't do what a lot of industries do in terms of wooing clients. There was instructions about what we should do, whether it's taking them out to lunch, taking them out to dinner, buying them gifts, buying them flowers, or buying them cookies, just, sweetening the deal. And throughout my time in this job, there was really great people, but there was really bad people as well who really took advantage of that, because my job every single day that I sat down to work was map out what schools you're going to visit, get in your car and drive around and visit those schools. Okay. So I would be brought into the office of the technology director. That was who I was selling to. These are the technology people within schools. every type of technology role I was selling to, whether it was like the CIO, the superintendent, the school principal, the technology manager, whoever was in charge in these roles within these school districts in the great state of New Jersey, where I was living at the time. And I was just met with, like I said, a lot of great people, but then people who just made my job really difficult with inappropriate behavior. So there was multiple situations, inappropriate conduct, but I'm just going to give you kind of 3 situations that really stood out to me that if I could look back and say, yeah, that's what pushed me over the edge, it would be these situations. So number 1, I had one guy who, I had a work phone, I had a business card, I would give them my card, and then they would have access to text me on the work phone. So I have text from this guy, and he's basically, I'm sitting here like, hey, would you like to place an order for this? And I'm getting text messages about how he's depressed because he lost his father, sending me pictures of like a hot air balloon festival that he went to with his father before he passed. So like right then and there, I'm almost being treated as more of like a paid therapist and a shoulder to cry on. I'm like, okay, trying to be nice, trying to be professional. Hey, I'm going to be in your district around this time. Can I come by and present some products to you? Yes, but why don't we make it a 5 p.m. so we can go get happy hour and drinks instead of lunch? It was always these little interactions where I'm sitting here and I'm being graded on my metrics, my KPIs of how many calls I can make, how many meetings I can book, and how many orders I can get. And instead of me being able to do the job, it was met with a lot of that unprofessional, way too personal, hey, you're not taking me seriously. The second guy was a married man who basically, again, we're going back and forth. Hey, can we get some orders going? I would love to sell you this, this, and this. You said you need this. Here you go. And it's, hey, what would it take for a guy like me to get a chance with a girl like you? Like, these are the type of texts. And what's so frustrating about it to me looking back is that I'm just sitting there trying to get my job done. So I can't really stand up for myself because you need to put on this professional front. And if you tell them, hey, go F yourself, what do you think my odds are of making that sale after I stand up for myself or put them in their place? And the type of sale it was like you get into an account and then you build a long-term relationship and then you continue to sell them products. That's what my boss always would say to me. This is a relationship-based sale. This is a relationship-based sale. Go build relationships. So for me to come in there and kind of like actually stand up for myself would have just sabotaged me in the role. And mind you, I worked my entire career to build up to this point where I got this high salary and was making these good commissions. I bought my first Louis Vuitton bag, my first designer bag with money from this job, from a big commission check. So I was so proud of myself that I had gotten to this point and I just didn't want to screw it up and I didn't want to sabotage myself. So I would say the culminating point was, well, we go to these trade shows, and every industry has their in-person trade shows where they all these guys get together and it's a big convention. We have the booth and I'm at the booth and your job is to walk around and network and meet people and entertain, right? So you have to take these people out to dinner, try to get the sale, build relationships, all this stuff. And our trade show took place in Atlantic City. Now, unfortunately, many of the, and again, it is not a knock on men, but it was an industry where if you look at the technology director or the tech manager in any type of school district, it's most likely a man. And they're out in AC for the night. And the liquor is flowing and the free food and the free liquor is everywhere and they're away from their wives and kids for the night and all that type of stuff. So it's obviously just lends itself to bad behavior. And I'll never forget, I had the superintendent of a well-known school district in North Jersey. I'll never forget this man. Not a bad-looking guy, but very, very cocky. And I'll never forget, he like took me aside, and I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna like talk business with me. I'm finally gonna get this account, and basically just is shooting his shot. And he's like, hey, like, what are you doing tonight? And I said, well, I go to bed early. I'm an early sleeper, so I'm actually about to head up, blah, blah, blah. So then he's scrambling. He's like, what do you say? He goes, why are you doing this job? He goes, why don't you become, which I had told him in another conversation that I used to be an ESL instructor. He goes, I could give you a job making like $80,000, $90,000 in my school district as an ESL teacher. What, would you like that? Would you like that? And I'm like, oh my God, here we go. So he takes out his phone. Mind you, it's like pictures of his 2 young boys. And he's like, can I get your number? Come on. Being just very pushy. And I said, oh, listen, I got to go to bed, going up there for the night, and thank you. Have a great day. And he's like, okay. Well, I'd like to place an order with you. Like, I know that you provide this. We need Chrome, you sell Chromebooks. I need Chromebooks. I said, okay, awesome. So I reach out to the inside salesperson at the office in Mississippi, and I say, listen, I finally had a conversation with this guy. He's kind of creepy, but he wants an order of like several hundred Chromebooks, like put in this order. So my inside sales rep puts in the order into the system. Next day, must have sent it to him. All is well. I go down to the trade show floor. I'm behind the booth, and I guess because the night didn't go his way and he wasn't able to successfully shoot his shot, he basically came down to the booth and started berating me. He pulled up the quote on his cell phone that my inside rep had sent him, saying, your company completely overcharges for this. How dare you send me this quote? This is so inflated. And everybody, like, he's yelling, he's raising his voice. And I'm sitting there like, excuse me, like what? And people around are looking at this whole thing. So I'm like beside myself. Like I just got bitched out for nothing. And I call my boss, and I explained to him exactly what happened, word for word, the entire thing. There's people watching, I have proof. And he goes, okay, Christine. He goes, just mind you, my boss was like a nice Southern gentleman from Mississippi. He's like, just say the word and I will call the HR of that school. I will raise hell. He goes, I will make his life hell, but you give me the word. Do you want me to do that? And I said, no. I said, let's just drop it. Because at the time, again, I just didn't want to make waves. And that's something interesting just too with not wanting to kind of speak up. A lot of people are confused about that. Like, hey, if this happened, why didn't you say something at the time? And it's for all the reasons I explained. When you have a job to do and your job is to get in with people and build these relationships and your income and your livelihood depends on it, you don't have all of the options in the world. You don't have the ability to just stand up for yourself unless you're at that time willing to just give it all up, unless you're at that point where you're like, I'm going to say something, and if it ends in me losing my job, I'm okay with that. But how many people are at that point where they're saying to themselves, no matter what happens, I'm willing to lose my job for this, just for the sake of standing up and doing what's right. If you have bills to pay, it's not that easy. So looking back on all of it, I'll never forget, I spoke to a coworker and I said, I didn't want to get these people in trouble. That was another huge thing too, of like why I didn't report more, because I'm saying to myself, these are men who are all married, who all have kids. Like, I don't want to like upend their lives and make them lose their jobs like that. And I'll never forget, I was talking to a coworker and he said, oh my God, he goes, you're so naive. He goes, you really think that you reporting that would have ended their jobs? He said they would have gotten a verbal warning at most, which actually made me just like really sad. So that's really the story of kind of, I after all of those situations, completely quit my job with no backup plan. I was on unemployment, and that was when I finally started researching and becoming a freelancer. And you guys know the rest of the story. I lay out the steps for you of what I did and how I became a freelancer during that time of unemployment, of like burning down my prior career. And the hard part is, I think, is when you're in my position, because not only am I someone who relies on freelance income, but I have a whole digital product, a digital course, and a community where I mentor other freelancers. You always kind of have to be like a beacon of hope, and you have to calm people down when things are getting tough. Because I know in the past couple of years, there's been so much there's been so much fear mongering about AI. There's been so much fear rippling throughout the community. And the approach I've taken with AI is literally to calm people down and say, listen, it's going to impact for sure, but it doesn't have to if you do X, Y, and Z. So even when people started reaching out to me saying, Christine, have you heard about this PRO Act and the stuff with the Biden administration and what's going to happen to freelancers if this law, I so want to be like, you know what, guys, it's going to be fine. Don't worry. Here's this workaround. Here's this. That's always what I've done. Even they just did a change to LinkedIn where you kind of have to do some workarounds if you want to use LinkedIn to prospect for clients. I'm always going to be someone who provides a workaround and someone who's going to say, don't freak out, because being in fear is not helpful no matter what. But this is one of those situations where we need to not just sit with our head in the sand and say like, oh, okay, well, however it works out, it works out. It's time to actually make that move and take that action and write your rep for your state. Someone said, I received your email today and don't think this thing will get passed. Agreed, but we can't rest on that. We need to actually be the people who are writing our congressional reps and asking them and showing, because that's what happens when they see that people are upset about it. You know, they want to go up in the polls, so they'll just do what the people want, and we need to make enough noise. But for some reason, this community has been so quiet about this. And I said it in the email, it's bipartisan, because no matter who you vote for and what your beliefs are, this will impact you. So now it's just a matter of, do you want to be a freelancer and be in business or not? I don't have the answer of, hey, it's all going to be okay right now, because my mindset is, oh no, I cannot go back to being a W-2 employee. That's my fear because of everything I've told you on this live. I cannot go back there. So I'm here with you as someone who literally is also scared for my own income. I didn't have that disposition when it came to AI. I think that was a lot of false fear mongering, but this is very real. So do what you can do, which my ethos is don't freak out, but focus on what you can control. And writing your rep is something you can control, and sharing a post and spreading awareness to your freelance community is something you can control. And don't be embarrassed that you voted for Biden, because you made that mistake and he's destroying this country, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean you can't stand up against this bill. Similar with other politicians, if they're going to pass something that's going to impact my livelihood, I don't care if I voted for them. Now we need to clean up the mess. So I really urge you to reach out to your rep. There's a copy and paste letter that Ed Gandia has so graciously written for us. I've posted the exact steps on LinkedIn of how you can get into action. It's 3 steps. It's number 1, identify your rep based on your zip code. Provide the link for that. The second thing is, hey, copy and paste this letter. Obviously customize it to you. Just like customize 3 lines and then send it to that rep, and then educate yourself by reading the articles that are out about this and make noise and educate people about what's going on. And that's all we can do. So I hope this was helpful. At the end of the day, God is always on the throne. That's why I don't get super, super worked up when I hear about these terrible laws, these terrible decisions that are being made, because God is in control and that's all we can hope for. But there are things we can do and steps we can take. So I hope this helped. Please message me if you have any questions or you need prayer or support. I'll be talking about this within my community tomorrow when I get on the call, talking about my website copywriting process. I'll kind of give you some more details about how I think this could go if it does actually go into effect, and hopefully provide some comfort there. Thank you guys.